Welcome back. Another quiet evening has settled over the cottage. Beyond the garden gate, another story is waiting among the forests, fields, and hidden corner of the cottage lands. Tonight, we will follow a new path together. There is no rush. We have all evening. So find a comfortable place to rest and let us begin our journey. The rain arrived sometime during the late afternoon, long before lanterns were lit and long before the first stars appeared above the trees. At first, it had been a little more than a scattering of droplets tapping softly against the cottage windows. Yet, as the hours passed, the clouds gathered more closely together, and the gentle shower gradually transformed into a steady spring rain. By evening, the cottage lands glistened beneath a silver curtain of falling water. The garden paths darkened with moisture. Tiny streams formed between rows of vegetables. Rain collected in the broad leaves of cabbages and lettuce before tumbling over their edges in sparkling droplets. The orchard swayed gently beneath the weather, each branch accepting the rain as though greeting an old friend who had finally come to call. Inside the cottage, everything felt warm and comfortable. A small fire crackled within the stove, filling the room with a pleasant glow that danced across the walls and the bookshelves. The scent of tea lingered in the air, mingling with the smell of wood smoke and rain drifting through a slightly open window. Beyond the glass, droplets raced one another towards the windowsill, while inside the cottage, all was calm and cozy. Water trickled from overflowing barrels, splashed into puddles, and wandered through hidden channels in the garden soil. Each sound blended naturally with the others until the entire landscape seemed to be performing a quiet evening song. The rain has a way of encouraging stillness. Not the stillness of winter, when the world seems to sleep beneath snow and ice, but a softer kind of stillness, a stillness that invites reflection, a stillness that reminds growing things to drink deeply and rest for a while. Outside, the forest appears different beneath the storm. The trunks of the trees have darkened with moisture, while the moss covering stones and fallen logs glows an even richer shade of green. Mist drifts between the branches in pale ribbons, softening the edges of the woodland and giving the entire forest a dreamlike appearance. The deeper portions of the woods had nearly disappeared altogether, hidden beneath layers of rain and fog. Looking out across the landscape, it was easy to imagine that the cottage existed at the edge of some forgotten world where only the rain knew the way between places. The droplet reached the bottom of the glass and disappeared from view. Its journey, however, was far from over. In fact, it was only just the beginning. From somewhere high above the cottage lands, among the gray clouds drifting across the evening sky, a tiny droplet of rain had already begun an adventure that would carry it through forests, gardens, streams, and hidden places few creatures ever see. And tonight, if you would like, we can follow along. Because sometimes the smallest journeys reveal the most beautiful stories. And the rain, as it turns out, has many stories to tell. High above the cottage lands, where the tops of the tallest pines disappeared into drifting mist, countless droplets of rain gathered among the clouds. From the ground, the clouds appeared soft and uniform, stretching across the evening sky in gentle shades of gray. Yet within them existed an entire world of movement. Tiny droplets drifted together and apart, carried by unseen currents of air as the wind guided them across forests, fields, and distant hills. Among those countless droplets was one. Not that anyone could have picked it out from the others. And yet, like every droplet of rain that falls upon the earth, it was part of a journey much larger than itself. For a time, the droplet drifted peacefully among the clouds. The air around it felt cool and gentle. Wisps of mist curled and shifted through the sky while distant currents nudged the cloud ever onward. Below lay the cottage lands, though from this height they appeared small and quiet beneath the evening rain. The forest stretched like a dark green blanket across the landscape. The orchard formed neat rows beside the cottage. Fields rolled gently towards the horizon, and threading through it all were streams and ponds that reflected what little light remained in the evening sky. The droplet had traveled far to reach this place. Perhaps it had once been part of a stream flowing through the forest. Perhaps it had rested within the roots of an apple tree. Perhaps it had drifted across an ocean before joining the clouds. There is no way to know. Water is always moving, always changing, always becoming part of something new. That was one of nature's oldest stories. The clouds continued their slow passage across the landscape, and before long the droplet felt something change. A moment later, gravity offered its gentle invitation, and the droplet began to fall. The droplet drifted through layers of mist and cloud while the earth slowly rose to meet it. Wind guided its path from side to side. Other droplets fell nearby, some racing ahead while others lingered behind. As the droplet descended, it passed a flock of birds returning to their nests before the storm grew stronger. Their wings silently cut through the damp air as they disappeared into the shelter of the woods. Farther below, a fox trotted along a narrow trail, pausing briefly beneath the branches of a pine tree before continuing towards its den. The world carried on beneath the rain. The forest had always welcomed storms. Rain filled streams and ponds. Rain nourished roots. Rain awakened seeds hidden beneath the soil. Closer now, close enough to see individual leaves trembling beneath the storm. Close enough to notice puddles forming along the garden paths. Close enough to glimpse warm lantern light glowing through the cottage windows. The droplet sailed past the roof, past the chimney, past climbing vines that curled along the cottage walls, and at last it landed upon the broad green leaf of the cabbage growing in the garden. The landing was so gentle that the leaf barely moved. The droplet settled into a shallow pool already gathered there, joining several others that had arrived earlier in the evening. Together they reflected the cloudy sky above, and for a while they rested. The garden seemed perfectly content to hold them. Nearby, rows of lettuce glistened beneath the rain. Young pea plants climbed their supports. Herbs filled the damp air with faint traces of mint and chives whenever the breeze wandered through. Everything looked refreshed. Everything looked alive. The rain continued falling steadily overhead. Some droplets soaked into the soil immediately. Others gathered along leaves and stems. A few slid slowly downward before disappearing into the earth below. The droplet remained where it was, balanced upon the cabbage leaf while the storm carried on around it. Had it possessed the ability to think, perhaps it would have assumed the journey was over. After all, it had fallen from the clouds. It had reached the earth. It had arrived. Yet nature rarely treats arrival as an ending. More often, arrival is simply the beginning of another chapter. As the rain continued, the cabbage leaf gradually bent beneath the growing weight of water. The pooled droplets shifted together, inching closer and closer to the edge. Then, with one final nudge from the rain, they slipped free. The droplet tumbled from the leaf and fell once more. This time, however, the journey would take it somewhere the clouds could never reach. Down into the soil, into the hidden world beneath the garden, into a place where roots stretched through darkness, worms carved winding tunnels, and countless living things worked quietly beneath every step taken above. A world few visitors ever see that was every bit as alive as the forest itself. The droplet slipped from the edge of the cabbage leaf and disappeared into the earth below. For a moment, everything became dark, the sort of darkness found beneath a warm blanket or inside a quiet room. Above, the rain continued falling across the garden. Below, an entirely different world was waiting. The droplets soaked gently into the soil, passing between grades of sand, tiny stones, and pockets of air left behind by roots and earthworms. The journey felt slower here than it had among the clouds. There was no wind to carry it and no great distance to fall. Instead, it moved gradually through the earth, following pathways that had been shaped over countless seasons. The soil beneath the cottage gardens was rich and dark, built 1 year at a time from fallen leaves, compost, roots, and all the quiet work of the forest and garden working together. Soil is often thought of as a library because it contains stories. Every fallen leaf contributed a page. Every growing root added another chapter. The seasons themselves left a mark, layering 1 year upon another until the earth became a record of everything that had lived there before. The droplet drifted deeper, tiny root hairs stretching through the soil around it, delicate as threads. They belonged to carrots, lettuces, herbs, and flowers growing throughout the garden beds, each one quietly gathering water and nutrients needed for the next growing season. The roots were patient. Nothing hurried here. The worms did not rush their tunnels. The roots did not race towards their destination. Even the water moved at its own steady pace. It was a place where growth happened slowly enough that no one noticed it from one day to the next, yet quickly enough that entire gardens transformed over the course of a season. The droplet passed along the root of a young strawberry plant. Only a few weeks earlier, the plant had appeared little more than a handful of leaves resting close to the soil. Before long, it would send out runners and flowers. Later still would come fruit, bright and sweet beneath the summer sun. For now, the strawberry plant was quietly preparing. Much of nature's work, after all, happens long before anyone sees the results. The droplet continued onward. As it moved deeper through the garden bed, it entered a region where pale strands stretched through the soil like delicate threads woven into a great underground tapestry. Mycelium. The hidden network of fungi that connected much of the world beneath the surface. The threads extended in every direction, branching and reconnecting until they formed something far larger than any one mushroom that might eventually appear above ground. To most visitors, the garden ended at the soil's surface. The vegetables, flowers, and herbs were easy to see. The mushrooms that occasionally appeared after rainstorms could be admired, but the vast network beneath them remained largely invisible. The droplet drifted among those pale threads, moving through a world that seemed remarkably busy despite its silence. Nothing here demanded attention. The work simply continued, steady and constant, much like the rain itself. Eventually, the droplet found its way into a small tunnel carved by an earthworm. The passage curved gently through the soil, smooth along its walls and surprisingly spacious by underground standards. Water collected easily here, forming tiny streams that carried droplets from one part of the garden to another. The earthworm responsible for the tunnel was not far away. It moved through the darkness with quiet determination, continuing the endless task of improving the soil one tunnel at a time. The tunnel sloped gradually downward before widening into a larger chamber formed around the roots of an old apple tree growing near the edge of the orchard. The tree had stood there for many years. The deeper the droplet traveled, the quieter everything became. Above ground, rain still tapped against leaves and rooftops. The wind still moved through the orchard. The fire still crackled softly within the cottage stove. Down here, however, the world felt hushed and protected, wrapped in the steady comfort of the earth. It was the sort of quiet that invited rest. For all its movement, rain eventually comes to rest somewhere. A pond, a stream, a root, a seed. The droplet continued following the gentle pull of gravity through the darkness, unaware that its underground journey was slowly leading it towards something new. Far beyond the garden beds and orchard roots, hidden beneath layers of soil and stone, water was gathering in a secret place beneath the cottage lands where countless droplets met after their travels through the earth. a place where underground water moved patiently through ancient channels carved over many years. A place that would eventually guide the droplet back into the forest, back into the open air beneath the rain-washed sky. But for now, there was no need to hurry. The earth held the droplet gently. The roots continued their quiet work. The rain nourished the world above. And beneath the garden, where few eyes ever wandered, another chapter of the journey unfolded in perfect peace. Far beneath the cottage lands, the droplet continued its quiet journey through the earth. The rain still fell above, though its steady rhythm had softened as the evening deepened into night. The garden rested beneath the storm. The orchard swayed gently in the breeze. The forest stood watch beneath drifting mist. The droplet drifted through narrow passages worn smooth by centuries of flowing water. Tiny currents guided it through hidden chambers beneath the hills, where countless other droplets had gathered after their own journeys through the rain-soaked earth. Together, they formed an underground stream that flowed silently through darkness. The underground stream wound its way beneath the forest, carrying the droplet along with it. Overhead, roots stretched through the soil like the beams of a great hidden cathedral. Some belonged to towering pines, others to young birches or ancient maples that had stood watched over the cottage lands for generations. Each tree drew strength from the same earth. Each root reached towards the same water. And now, for a little while, the droplet became part of that connection. The stream curved around a shelf of stone before gradually continuing on. Soon the droplet noticed something it had not seen since leaving the clouds. Light. Faint at first. And then, quite suddenly, the stream emerged into the open air and poured into a spring. Water bubbled gently from the hillside beneath a cluster of moss-covered stones, spilling into a narrow brook that wound its way through the forest. The rain had nearly ended. Only a few lingering droplets still fell from the branches overhead. The clouds had begun to part, and above the trees the moon shone once more. The brook sparkled beneath its light. After so much time spent beneath the earth, the world seemed bright and expansive. The forest floor glistened from the storm. Mushrooms pushed through damp patches of moss. Ferns held tiny beads of water along their unfurling fronds. Each leaf reflected moonlight like polished glass. The brook carried the droplet onward, past fallen logs covered in emerald moss, past clusters of wildflowers drinking deeply from the storm, past quiet clearings where rabbits slept beneath shrubs and foxes rested in hidden dens. The forest had settled into its deepest nighttime calm, the sort of calm that arrives when every creature has found its place and every task has been set aside until morning. The brook eventually widened. Its waters moved more slowly now, gathering into a pond hidden among reeds and willow trees. The surface reflected the stars overhead. The occasional ripple wandered across the water. Yet the pond remained peaceful. The droplet drifted into the still water and lingered there. Above, the clouds continued to thin. One by one, more stars appeared. The storm was ending. Its journey across the cottage lands was nearly complete. The garden had received its drink. The orchard had welcomed the rain. The forest roots had gathered what they needed. Streams and ponds had been filled. The rain had done exactly what it had came to do, and now the world rested. The droplet floated quietly among the reflections. The moon, the stars, the silhouettes of willow branches swaying gently overhead. For a moment, everything seemed connected. The cloud that had carried the rain, the garden where it had fallen, the roots beneath the soil, the underground stream, the forest brook, the pond beneath the stars. One journey, many chapters, all part of the same story. Perhaps people are not so different. We move through seasons of our own. Some are bright, Some are cloudy, some feel uncertain, others feel peaceful. Yet, even when we can't see where the path is leading, we continue forward one step at a time, like the growing things hidden beneath the soil. The pond remains still beneath the moonlight as the forest breathes softly around it. And somewhere beyond the trees, the warm glow of the cottage lantern still shone through the darkness. Inside, the fire had burned low, the blankets waited, the kettle rested quietly upon the stove. Everything had settled into the comfortable rhythm of late evening, the sort of rhythm that reminds us that there is nothing left to accomplish tonight. Nothing left to carry, nothing left to solve. The rain had finished its work, and perhaps you have done enough for today as well. The garden will continue growing while you sleep. The forest will continue its quiet conversations among roots and leaves. The streams will continue their journeys beneath the stars. The rain will find its way home again, as it always does. And tomorrow, when morning arrives, the cottage lands will awaken refreshed and renewed beneath a clearer sky. For now, however, the night belongs to rest. The breeze grows softer, stars continue their slow journey overhead, and sleep arrives the way the rain arrived earlier that afternoon. Like droplets gathering among clouds, like water sinking into welcome earth, like a stream finding its way through the forest. The journey is complete. The gardens rest, the fires burn low, the forest grows quiet. The stars continue their slow journey overhead. There is nowhere else you need to be, and nothing more you need to carry tonight. Until our paths cross again, may your sleep be deep, your dreams be gentle, and your heart be as peaceful as the cottage tonight. Good night.